Pranamami Hari Priye Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. You know what chapter and text we're on, Prabhu? $240. So we start on chapter 2, text 41. Chapter 1, text 41. Sorry. That is on page 65 in the temple room. Okay, Sanskrit and English together, please. Sankaro narakavyaiva kula gnanam kulasya cha patanti pitaro hyesham lupta pindotaka kriya. Translation. When there is increase of unwanted population, a hellish situation is created both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. In such corrupt families, there is no offering of oblations of food and water to the ancestors. Text 42. Dosai etai kula gnanam varna sankara karakahi utsadyante chati dharma kula dharmascha shashvataha. Translation. Due to the evil deeds of the destroyers of family tradition, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. Text 43. Utsana kula dharmanam manushyanam janardana narake niyatam vaso bhavit bhavatityanushuma. Translation. Translation. O Krishna, maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciplic succession that those who destroy family traditions dwell always in hell. Text 44. Aho bata mahat papam kartum vyavasita vayam yadraja sukha lobhena hantum swajanam udyataha. Translation. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts, driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. Text 45. Yadi mam apraktikaram shastram shastrapanayah ratarashtrarane hanyus tanme kshetma tarang bhavet. Translation. I would consider it better for the sons of Dhritarashtra to kill me unarmed and unresisting, rather than fight with them. Text 46. Sanjaya uvacha evam uktvarjuna sankye ratopasta upavisashat vishvijya sasaram chapam Shoka Samvignamanasaha. Translation. Sanjaya said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. Chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized. Sanjaya uvacha tang tatat kripa Kristam Ashru Purna Kulekshanam Vishidang tamidang vakyam uvacha madhusudanaha. Translation. Sanjaya said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion and very sorrowful, his eyes brimming with tears, Madhusudana, Krishna, spoke the following words. Text 2. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kutastva Kashmalang Idam Vishame Samupastitam Anarya Justama Swargyam Kirti Karamarjuna. Translation. The Supreme Person, Bhagavan, said, my dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all befitting a man who knows the progressive values of life. They do not lead to higher planets, but to infamy. Text 3. Klaibyang masma gama parta naitattvai upapadyate Kshudram hridaya daulabhya tyakto vitishta parantapa. Translation. O son of Pritha, do not yield to this degrading impotence. It does not become you. Give up such petty weakness of heart, and arise, O chastiser of the enemy. Text 4. Arjuna uvacha katam bhishmam saham sankye Dronam cha madhusudana ishubhi pratiyotsyami pujarha madhusudana. Translation. Arjuna said, O killer of Madhu, Krishna, how can I counteract with arrows in battle men like Bhishma and Drona who are worthy of my worship? Back to text 41. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. When there is an increase of unwanted population, a hellish situation is created both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. In such corrupt families, there is no offering of oblations of food and water to the ancestors. Purport. According to the rules and regulations of fruitive activity, there is a need to offer periodical food and water to the forefathers of the family. This offering is performed by worship of Vishnu, because the eating of remnants of food offered to Vishnu can deliver one from all kinds of sinful actions. Sometimes the forefathers may be suffering from various types of sinful reactions, and sometimes some of them cannot even acquire a gross material body and are forced to remain in subtle bodies as ghosts. Thus, when remnants of prasadam food are offered to forefathers by descendants, the forefathers are released from ghostly or other kinds of miserable life. Such help rendered to forefathers is a family tradition, and those who are not in devotional life are required to perform such rituals. One who is engaged in the devotional life is not required to perform such actions. Simply by performing devotional service, one can deliver hundreds and thousands of forefathers from all kinds of miseries. It is stated in the Bhagavatam, Devarshi bhutaptanunam pitrinam na kankaro nayamini charajan sarvatmana sharanam saranya gato mukundam parihritya kartam. Quote, anyone who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, the giver of liberation, giving up all kinds of obligation, and is taken to the path in all seriousness, owes neither duties nor obligations to the demigods, sages, general living entities, family members, humankind, or forefathers. Bhagavatam 11.541. Such obligations are automatically fulfilled by performance of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is a very nice verse. It's in the purport, it's talking about two different things. One is how important prasadam is, especially Vishnu prasadam. And two, it's also talking about how devotional service is supreme in all aspects, because if one performs devotional service, then he has no obligations whatsoever to any kind of forefather, demigod, living entity, or superior, or, well, maybe his superiors, but any living entity, honestly. And the prasadam is very, I'll touch on the prasadam for a little bit. The prasadam is, it's food stuff that has been offered to Lord Krishna, or made with love and devotion, and then offered to Lord Krishna. And we can see this in Sunday festivals. We're always seeing how excited people are to taste this prasadam, because it's so tasty. You know, it's Krishna's tasted this food stuff, and he's made it so that we can taste it nicely and be satisfied by taking this prasadam. And not only that, it also purifies us of all sinful reactions. So if you're simply just taking prasadam and chanting your 16 rounds, maybe doing a little reading, doing a little bit of seva, that's honestly all you need to do to go back home, back to Godhead. It's said in the Nectar of Instruction, I think it is, that if one simply makes a vow to never eat anything except prasadam, then he can go back to and never eat anything but prasadam. Is that right? Okay. Yeah, I think it was in a anyway. So yeah, if we make this vow, then we can go back to Godhead, because I was reading in Srimad Bhagavatam that it was a really nice point that Prabhupada was making during the purport. He was saying that any action performed outside of Krishna consciousness is considered sinful activity. And then he goes on to say that any kind of education out that doesn't lead to knowledge of Krishna is false education. So I want to say something about that false education as well, because that's really important. That's basically what we're brought up here in the West learning, is false education. We learn all these things in elementary school, middle school, high school, even college. We learn mathematics. That's good, but simple mathematics is good. We learn mathematics. We learn history. We learn sociology, social studies, all these things. But it means nothing if we can't surrender to Krishna, if we don't have any knowledge of Krishna. And this is why the Babajis, Gorakishore Das Babaji was the spiritual master of Bhaktisiddhanta, but surprisingly enough, he was illiterate. So this is what the Babajis and the great Mahatmas do. They feel like if it's not going to help me develop my love for Krishna, then it's just useless. So why even put any effort into it? So this is why the Babajis, the great souls, the Mahatmas, they usually are illiterate, because they have better things to do with their time rather than go to school, get an education. And we can see how purified they become later in their lives. So this is we have to be careful with what we put. I was hearing Vaisheshika Prabhu one time, and he was saying that we're responsible for all the things that we put into our consciousness, whether that's education, videos, music, video games, anything like that. Especially as devotees, as aspiring devotees, we have to be very careful with what we put into our consciousness. If it's not ISKCON, if it's not bona fide ISKCON content or anything like that, it should be rejected, because it's just going to bring us suffering at the end. And I have experience of this. I remember when I was going through an existential crisis, I was going through some depression, and it was really, when you're on these apps and things like that, and you're just surfing the web, it's really depressing, because you're just sitting there doing nothing but looking and scrolling, and it affects your consciousness, everything you see. So anyways, that's beside the point. I kind of went off on a tangent. But yeah, false education, I mean, education that doesn't lead to Krishna is false education. And sin and activities that isn't directed towards Krishna is sinful activity. So sinful activity can also mean that we're eating things other than prasadam. Anything that's not offerable to Krishna. And like that. So the Lord's prasadam is very special because it purifies us, like I said, and it, yeah, I think I've spoken all I could on that. But anyway, this is something that this prasadam is something that this is our secret weapon. I remember now that I remember, um, there was this Swami, there was this Maharaj, I don't know his name, but we were hearing it on Srila Prabhupada Memories that he said that, oh wait, it might not have been a Swami in our movement, but he was saying that prasadam is our secret weapon because Srila Prabhupada was saying this. I'm not saying this, but he was saying that basically all the people today are like animals, and they're very they're very they're very they're very bodily conscious. So if we give them prasadam, that's really good preaching right there. You give them enough prasadam, then they'll inquire about the philosophy. So this is why the Sunday feast is so important. It's really important that we invite people to these Sunday feasts. I'm coming to this realization more and more because it's nice to see people at the Sunday feast. But this prasadam it helps engage them in service. And you can see after they're done with their prasadam, they're so satisfied that when we ask them, can you do a little service for us, service with us, help us out a little bit. We could use some help with the dishes. We could use help cleaning up. They're so satisfied and so pleased with the prasadam that they're willing to engage in a little bit of service. And that's for their eternal benefit. So we're helping so many people simply by cooking food and offering it to Krishna. It's a really simple process. You say a few mantras, you chant Hare Krishna, and then the food becomes transcendental. So this is a very helpful weapon that we have in our Sankirtan movement. And I think it's really important that we use this for book distribution or when we're trying to, win someone over, whether it's a manager at a store or something like that, someone who's been very kind to us. We should always use this prasadam to help purify them as well, because it's for their eternal benefit. It's service to take prasadam. So I think I've talked enough about this point. We can go to the next text. Due to the evil deeds of the destroyers of family tradition, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. Purport. The four orders of human society, combined with family welfare activities, as they are set forth by the institution of the Sanatana Dharma or Varnashram Dharma, are designed to enable the human being to attain his ultimate salvation. Therefore, the breaking of the Sanatana Dharma tradition by irresponsible leaders of society brings about chaos in that society, and consequently, people forget the aim of life, Vishnu. Such leaders are called blind, and persons who follow such leaders are sure to be led into chaos. And again, this is speaking about Varnashram Dharma, the leaders of society, and how we need leaders with vision. The Varnashram Dharma system is a system that was created by Krishna, and it deals with four castes and four social orders and four occupations, I think it is. And that is the Brahmana occupation, the Kshatriya occupation, the Vaishya occupation, and the Shudra occupation. And then the social order is, no, that's the social order. And then the occupation is brahmachari, grihastha, vanapras, sannyas. So the brahmachari life is student life. And when one is a student, one lives in the renounced order of life, and one takes on austerities and serves the spiritual master in his ashram with his spiritual master, trying to serve him as best as he can. And he inquires submissively. He renders service, and he does one other thing. I can't remember. It's an important text in the Gita, but I can't remember what it is exactly. And grihastha life, and you're supposed to do this brahmachari life for about 20 years. You start when you're 5 years old, and you go all the way till you're 25. And so you do it for 20 years. And when you reach that 25th year of your life, you're supposed to go into the grihastha ashram. And the grihastha ashram is it's an ashram meant for regulated sense gratification. So when we're in the grihastha ashram, we're supposed to stay brahmachari, but you can also have children. The only license to have sense gratification is when you're procreating when you're using sense gratification only for the process of creating children and for Krishna conscious children. So that's what grihastha life is like. Then the vanapras stage is where after you're you're supposed to stay in that ashram for 25 years, the grihastha ashram. You're supposed to stay in this grihastha ashram for about 25 years, or 20 years. I can't remember. 20. Let's go with 25. Then you go to the vanapras ashram, and the vanapras ashram is all about retirement and austerities. So after you finish your grihastha life, you're supposed to retire from worldly activities and engage in austerities like you did when you were a brahmachari. So this is where in this ISKCON movement, I was reading Srila Prabhupada, one of Srila Prabhupada's purports, and he was saying that it was about Maharaj Prithu and how he performed all these amazing austerities. But Prabhupada was saying that in this day and age, it's impossible to do the types of austerities that they did in the Satya Yuga. So in this age, all we have to do is chant 16 rounds and follow the 4 regulative principles. And in that way, we can actually, in that way, we can actually be situated in real austerity, especially for this age. So just taking prasadam, again, prasadam is a very important part of our movement. And also following the 4 regulative principles. So these are very important principles that we have to free one from material conditioned life. And if one is intelligent, he'll take up this process and chant his 16 rounds and follow 4 regulative principles. And then in the final stage of life, when one is after 20 years of the vanapras ashram, one goes into the sannyas ashram, and this is where the living entity does preaching work. So one is supposed to retire to. One is supposed to preach this Krishna consciousness to as many people as he possibly can, living in the forest, living through austerity, and only staying in a householder's house for no more than 3 to 5 days. So preaching is the main focus of this ashram of sannyas. And I won't touch into that, but I'll just talk about a little bit about. So the brahmachari life is meant for studying and learning, and grihastha life is meant for charity. Vanapras life is meant for austerity and penance, and sannyas life is meant for preaching. So these 4 ashrams, they purify one of the desire for sense gratification. And in that way, that after one is thoroughly purified, he can go back home, back to Godhead at the end of his life. The purport also talks about, the leaders of society. Hold on. Enable the human being to attain his ultimate self. Therefore, the breaking. Yeah, the leaders of society. The leaders of society are very important. It's very important to have good leaders who are God conscious, or Rajarshis who have brahmanas. So we're in the Varnashram Dharma, there's 4 occupations: the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. And the Kshatriya class is meant to rule the people in general, and the Brahmana class is meant to advise the Kshatriya class on what they should be doing. So the ideal system of government is that we have one leader, which is a king, and then he has many ministers and brahmanas advising him on what he should be doing. And the king should listen, the king should follow the orders of the brahmanas. There's a pastime where in the Bhagavatam where King Vena, he was a demoniac king, and he wouldn't perform sacrifices, but he was so cruel that everyone was afraid of him. So the brahmanas were kind of at a loss. They didn't know what to do, because on one hand he was keeping the rogues and thieves away from surfacing and committing crime, but at the same time he wasn't performing sacrifices. So the Supreme Lord wasn't happy. And if you're not pleasing the Supreme Lord, then what's the point? You do all these good charitable works, but if you're not engaged in sacrifice, then there's really no benefit. So King Vena was a very demoniac king, and there's in that pastime of King Vena, this is the Prithu Maharaj pastime as well. But in that pastime of King Vena, the brahmanas had gone to King Vena, and they had said, Your Highness, we see that you're not performing any sacrifices, and we want you to know that this is not good, that we need to perform sacrifices in order to have good good crops, good weather, less disease, less poverty. So we need all these sacrifices, but you're not performing any of these, so we don't know what to do. Please perform sacrifices. And King Vena, this is basically what the politicians of today think. They think they're so exalted. But King Vena was saying that, why should you worship this Supreme Lord? Why should you worship this Vishnu? Just worship me, because everyone's supposed to worship the king. The king is the one who provides all the necessities of life. The king is the one who does everything for the people. So just worship the king. And the brahmanas were so offended that he would say such a thing, that they cursed him immediately and cursed him to die immediately. And he died immediately. And so we can see that these brahmanas, if they're treated respectfully, and if they uphold their Brahminical, values and their virtues, they can become they are very powerful, and they not only have the ability to curse someone, but they have the ability to bless them as well. So this is and this is why we need brahmanas in government nowadays, because the officials, they don't know what they're doing. I mean, before I came to this temple, I wasn't into news very much, but I was hearing about this President Joe Biden and how he has basically no idea how to run the country. And it's sad, because if this were a Vedic civilization, then he would have advisors and Brahmana advisors to help him make the most important decisions and help him not look so foolish, because he's honestly, he's yeah, anyway. So when we are, when we have these brahmanas in advising the king or the president, then this is Vedic civilization. This is what we want, because then when proper brahmanas are inside of the government, then we can have prosperity and wealth, health, all these things. In Maharaj Yudhishthir's time, there was no disease, no extreme heat, no extreme cold, and people were happy. They were prosperous. So we can't have. We shouldn't. We should try to strive to become brahmanas, and we should try to strive to help these leaders, because they are in need of brahmanas and more intelligent men to give them the philosophy of how to rule properly. So that's why we need to have these people in office. And yeah, so we can go on to the next text. O Krishna, maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciplic succession that those who destroy family traditions dwell always in hell. Purport. Arjuna bases his argument not on his own personal experience, but on what he has heard from the authorities. That is the way of receiving real knowledge. One cannot reach the real point of factual knowledge without being helped by the right person who is already established in that knowledge. There is a system in the Varnashram institution by which one has to undergo the process of ablution before death for his sinful activities. One who is always engaged in sinful activities must utilize the process of ablution called prayashchitta. Without doing so, one surely will be transferred to hellish planets to undergo miserable lives as the result of sinful activities. So, disciplic succession is very important. So there's two processes of attaining knowledge. One is the ascending process, and the other is the descending process. In the ascending process, one starts from I'm not so learned in the ascending process, so please forgive me. But in the descending process, one is passed down knowledge from ancient times to modern times, and through that system, the message never gets lost, because it stays the same. No one changes it. No one adds or subtracts anything into the philosophy or into the science or into the way of doing things. And so in this way, the disciplic succession is bona fide. It's a bona fide process of receiving information. And some say this is some say that this is that okay. Some say that this is not reliable, because if we don't have it written down, then how is it supposed to stay in our memories? And that's just another symptom of this age, is our loss of memory. The loss of memory is is one of the symptoms of Kali Yuga, and when in the previous ages, like Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, they would speak this philosophy, they would speak this Bhagavatam, this Bhagavad-gita, and automatically they would remember these points in this philosophy automatically without having to be reminded. So that's just one symptom of this Kali Yuga, is that the loss of memory is very prominent. Every day as we progress through Kali Yuga, we can see that, memory is getting shorter, people are getting more violent. There's more crime around the world. And this is all because of loss of memory because when one has memory of God, when one has a good memory, then they can remember God a lot easier. But if one loses his memory, then it's very difficult to remember God. And when one can't remember God, then he commits all sorts of sinful activities. That's what Srila Prabhupada was saying one time in a lecture. He was saying that loss of memory means forgetfulness of God. And that's why we have so many problems, because of this forgetfulness of God. I'm not so learned about this whole process of ablution before death. So let's just go to the next text. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts, driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. Purport. Driven by selfish motives, one may be inclined to such sinful acts as the killing of one's own brother, father, or mother. There are many such instances in the history of the world, but Arjuna, being a saintly devotee of the Lord, is always conscious of moral principles and therefore takes care to avoid such activities. And this, just to point out again, this is another symptom of the age of Kali, is that everyone has some sort of in this material world, everyone has a selfish motive. But since this is Kali Yuga, this is the most degraded in the material world. So material world means that we have material desires, which means we'll act selfishly. But if we're in the Kali Yuga, then these material desires are amplified hundreds of times. So this is our position. This is why we need to engage in devotional service, and chant Hare Krishna, because if we're not getting purified, then we're just being degraded. So if we're not in Krishna consciousness, we're in Maya. So it's really important to engage in this devotional service, because we want to be transcendental. We don't want to be degraded by any kind of age, anything like that. And we see this, so many stories in the news. When I was growing up, I remember there was this one story about a mother who killed her child and then got away with it. So there's so many examples about how, family members are killing family. I mean, Civil War was a huge example, brother killing brother, families going to war against one another because of a simple quarrel. Just people wanting freedom and not getting it. So this is the symptom of Kali Yuga, that it's an age of quarrel, and people are willing to kill one another because of simple quarrels and simple misunderstandings. It's said that, I remember hearing that the only thing stopping us from making spiritual advancement is misconceptions. So the misconception that we want to be God, and that we are we think ourselves to be God. That misconception is what's holding us back from true spiritual life. And that's why it's really important to ask questions, because if we have doubts, or if we have seedlings of doubt, we should bring it up so that um we can be freed of these misconceptions as much as possible. Maybe the person isn't so learned in like me, I'm not so learned in anything. So, I mean, but if I remember Swayam Bhagavan Keshava Maharaj was saying that Vaishnavas, imperfect Vaishnavas working together to become perfect is perfect. So when we're working together, even though we're imperfect and even though we don't have all the answers, the more devotees, try to cooperate, try to inquire from each other, try to socialize with each other, the more we try to preach together, the more we can become purified, and the more we can, at the end, the better of a chance we have of going back home, back to Godhead. So this is why we need to stay in the association of devotees as well, because with this association of devotees, we become purified. And with the association of devotees, we become purified. And what's it called? With the association of devotees, we become purified, and we help others become purified as well. So when we're getting purified, this is the goal of material world, is to become purified and focus on God more and more. I tell this to all the people on book distribution. I'm always telling them, this is God consciousness, and we just want people to become purified so that they can be happy. And that's really what we want. We want to serve as many people as we want to serve. That's our main goal, is to serve. We shouldn't have this. We should have this mood of service imbued in everything we do. We should want to help our fellow person, our fellow devotee, even if it's a non-devotee or an innocent person. We should want to help them as much as possible. We should want to help them because when we serve them, we ourselves become happier. We ourselves get the benefit from that. So this is the goal of devotional service, is service. And what is the reward of service? More service, more chanting, more cleaning, more work, more hard work that we all put forward together as a group of people. That's what makes us strong. And I remember one time I was reading a book with Maharaj, Danavir Maharaj, and it was the Shiksha Amrita, and we came to a point where Prabhupada was talking about how one stick can be broken easily, but a bundle of sticks, it's nearly impossible to break if you can even get your hand around it. So and Maharaj made a comment about that one particular quote. He was saying that divided we fall, together we stand. So this is the way to look at devotional service together. This is how we make it, is by coming together and working together to purify ourselves and purify each other, purify the whole world, become Guru, deliver the world. That's what Prabhupada said. That's what Sankarshan Das Adhikari says. And That's what we should say as well. So I think I'll stop there. I'm wondering if there's any comments or questions from the audience. Yes, Subhal Sakya Prabhu.
Suggested by authorities, by acharyas.
Yes.
So through the Sankirtan movement, is there a
Yeah, that's really nice. That's a really nice question. So the question is there this Sankirtan movement, is there a way for us to slow down, stop, or do something to make this Kali Yuga better? The answer is yes, there is a way for us to do that, and that is through profuse book distribution. So we were in Bhagavatam class one time, and I asked a question to, I think it was Magadari Prabhu. I said to him, so what are we supposed to do now that we don't have any more pious kings around? And I don't know if it was Magadari Prabhu or Maharaj that answered this question. They said, one of them said that Srila Prabhupada is a Rajarshi. He's a saintly king, and his books are law books given to us to slow the progress of this Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is going to progress no matter what, but these books, since they're the law books of Kali, I don't know, they're the law books of this age. If we distribute these books, then this Kali Yuga will slow down in its progress, and we'll see a difference in this world, because if we're actually following what's in Srila Prabhupada's books, then we should see a difference in the world, because then we'll change the government, we'll change the way people think. We'll have brahmanas actually in the government office. And when brahmanas are in the government office and advising the king or the president, then the decisions that get made are so much better. And so like this, if we continue on distributing books as best as we can, even if it's difficult. I know it's difficult, man. It's so difficult. But Prabhupada said that material life is impossible. He said, somebody went to him and they said, Prabhupada, book distribution is so difficult. And Prabhupada said, they said book distribution is difficult. And Prabhupada said, it's not difficult. It's very difficult, very, very difficult. But material life is impossible. That's what he said. So if we just distribute these books, and if we try to please Srila Prabhupada, and if we try our best to preach as much as we can, we don't even have, like Parma Karuna was saying, we don't even have to be very learned. We just have to say, we have these books, and if you could give a nice donation of $10, we'd really appreciate it. What do you think? That's all you have to say to them. If you have nothing to say, you can always pray to Krishna, to give you things to say. But if you have nothing to say, then you can just say, please take these books. They're only $10. And like that, they'll either say yes or no, and then you can just move on. They get the books, and then it gets in circulation. We get a little donation, helps us financially, and like that we can make this Kali Yuga slow down or stop. So that's how we can slow this Kali Yuga, is by distributing Prabhupada's books. Is that good? Thank you, Prabhu. Were there any other comments or questions? Okay. Srimad Bhagavad-gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam